At Thanksgiving, sister's wedding was beautiful. When's yours? I said, already had mine. You received invitations. Stunned silence. Dad, we never got them. I produced delivery receipts, all signed for. You tossed them out. The untouched cranberry sauce wobbled in its crystal bowl, a perfect facade for the perfect family Thanksgiving. But I knew the truth. I was holding a folder that was about to shatter everything, exposing a betrayal so deep it had stolen my wedding day. The air in my parents' crowded dining room was thick with forced cheer. 23 people, elbow to elbow, all pretending this was normal, while the woman who'd destroyed my life sat across from me, glowing. Aunt Sarah reached for the rolls, and the untouched cranberry sauce wobbled slightly. I was wedged between Cousin Mark and his new girlfriend, whose name had already slipped my mind twice. Turkey carved, wine flowing, it was a picture-perfect charade. But normal? God, no. Nothing had been normal for 8 months. My sister, Chloe, sat radiating at the other end of the table, her cream sweater shimmering, her new wedding band catching every glint of the chandelier. 5 months ago, she'd had what everyone still called the wedding of the year. 200 guests. A Sonoma Valley vineyard. A dress that probably cost more than my first car. A 7-tier cake that belonged in a museum. I'd seen it all, endlessly, on social media. I wasn't there. But then again, she hadn't been at mine either. Emily, honey, you're so quiet today, my mother, Linda, chimed in, her voice carrying that particular, forced cheerfulness she'd perfected over the years. Is everything all right? I managed a small smile, pushing sweet potatoes around my plate. Under the table, Daniel, my husband, squeezed my hand. He knew what was coming. We'd discussed this for weeks, debating if this was the right time, the right place. He'd left it up to me. Chloe laughed at something Uncle Robert said, throwing her head back in that theatrical way she'd picked up in college. She'd always been the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. Homecoming queen, summa cum laude, married to a pediatric surgeon, Ethan, who looked like he'd stepped straight out of a catalog. And me? I was the older sister who went to state school, became a high school English teacher, and married a general contractor. Oh, Chloe! Aunt Sarah gushed, beaming at my sister. Your wedding was absolutely spectacular. I've never seen anything like it. The string lights over the vineyard at sunset, pure magic. Chloe preened, soaking in the compliment like a queen receiving tribute. Thank you so much. We really wanted it to be special, you know? Something people would remember forever. Cousin Jessica chimed in, giggling, I'm still finding glitter from those favors in my purse. The conversation spiraled, everyone praising every detail, the food, the music, the venue, the decorations. I'd heard it all before, at every family gathering since her wedding. It was the only thing anyone wanted to talk about. My father cleared his throat from the head of the table. It was a proud day for your mother and me. Seeing our little girl marry such a fine young man. That stung, more than I'd expected. Daniel's hand tightened on mine. My heart hammered against my ribs. The familiar, bitter anger I'd been swallowing for months rose in my throat like bile. Emily, dear, my mother said, her eyes glinting with what might have been concern, but felt more like barely concealed condescension. You and Daniel have been married for what, almost 2 years now? 1.5 years, I replied, my voice quiet. Right. Right. She waved a dismissively manicured hand. Chloe's wedding just reminded us all how wonderful these celebrations are. You two had that small ceremony at the courthouse, didn't you? With just a few friends. The table went silent. Forks suspended midair. Everyone was listening now. Actually, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. We didn't get married at the courthouse. Chloe was staring at me now, her perfectly shaped eyebrows slightly raised. Ethan had an arm around her, looking confused. What do you mean? My father asked. We weren't there, so I just assumed. You weren't there? I interrupted, my voice barely a whisper. But that doesn't mean it was a courthouse wedding. My mother laughed, but it sounded nervous, forced. Honey, if you'd had a real wedding, we would have been there. We're your parents. This was it. The moment I'd been simultaneously dreading and anticipating for 8 months. I reached into my purse, which I'd kept on my lap throughout dinner for exactly this reason, and pulled out the thick, brown folder. I'd assembled it with the meticulous care I usually reserved for lesson plans. We got married on March 15th, I said, my voice carrying across the suddenly silent room. At the Grandview Manor. We invited 92 guests. 86 people came. There was a string quartet, a sit-down dinner, and a cake from Sprinkles Cupcakes. My dress was ivory lace, and Daniel wore a navy suit. My friend Olivia was my maid of honor, and Daniel's brother Ryan was his best man. The silence was deafening. I could hear the antique clock in the hallway ticking, each second stretching like taffy. Emily, what are you talking about? Chloe's voice had lost its musical quality. It sounded flat, almost robotic. I opened the folder, pulling out the first set of photos. My photographer had given me both digital and physical copies, and I'd printed the best ones at Sam's Club 2 weeks ago. I passed them to my left, toward my father. His face went pale as he looked at the images. My mother leaned over his shoulder, her mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. This can't be, my mother whispered. You never told us. I did tell you, I said calmly, though my hands were shaking. I sent the save the dates in December. I sent formal invitations in February. I called you, Mom, 3 times to discuss it. You told me you were too busy to talk about party planning and we could discuss it later. I don't remember any of that, she insisted, but her voice wavered. The photos were making their way around the table now. People stared at them, at me looking radiant in a dress I'd spent 6 months saving for. At Daniel looking at me like I was the only person in the world. At tables full of flowers and happy guests. This is photoshopped, Chloe said suddenly, her voice sharp. This has to be fake. You're making this up for attention. I almost laughed. Making it up for attention. That was rich, coming from her. The invitations were never sent, my father said firmly, recovering some composure. I never saw any invitation, Emily. If you'd actually invited us to your wedding, we would have been there. You know we would have. I'd prepared for this. God, had I prepared for this. From the folder, I pulled out the next set of documents, the receipts from the invitation service, complete with tracking numbers, the confirmation emails, and then the piece de resistance, the delivery confirmation receipts, each one showing a signature. I stood up, walked around the table to where my parents sat, and laid the papers in front of them. These are the tracking numbers for the save the dates, I said, pointing to the first document. You can see they were delivered on December 10th of last year. And these, I moved to the next page, are the tracking numbers for the formal invitations. Delivered February 3rd. My father's face had gone from pale to red. Anyone could have signed for these. Look at the signatures, I said quietly. He looked. My mother looked. They both went very still. The delivery company had used electronic signature pads, but Chloe's signature was still distinctive enough. The careful loops, the way she wrote her E with an extra flourish. It was unmistakably hers on both receipts. Chloe was house-sitting for you in December, I continued, my voice steady despite feeling like I was going to throw up. You and Mom were on that cruise for your anniversary. And in February, she was staying with you while her apartment was being renovated after that pipe burst. The table erupted into whispers. People leaned toward each other, confused, shocked. Aunt Sarah had her hand over her mouth. Chloe had gone white as a sheet. I don't. You threw them away, I said, finally looking directly at my sister. Both times. You intercepted the mail, saw they were from me, and you threw them away. That's absurd. Chloe cried, but her voice cracked. Why would I do that? Because you couldn't stand it, I replied. And suddenly, all the therapy sessions, all the late-night conversations with Daniel, all the tears I'd cried came pouring out in my words. You couldn't stand that I was getting married first. You'd been with Ethan for 4 years, and he hadn't proposed yet. You were furious that your older, less successful, less perfect sister was going to have a wedding before you. Emily, that's enough, my mother said sharply. No, I countered, surprised by the firmness in my own voice. It's not enough. I called you, Mom. I called you in January and told you we'd sent save the dates and asked if you'd received them. Do you remember what you said? My mother's lips pressed into a thin line. You said you'd been so busy with the holidays that you probably missed it in the mail pile and you'd look for it. You told me to resend the information via email. So, I did. I sent you an email with all the details. Do you want to guess what happened to that email? I pulled out my phone, already open to my email app. I'd screenshotted everything, printed everything, backed everything up 3 different ways. I sent the email to your personal email address on January 16th at 10:23 a.m. But you'd given Chloe access to that account years ago so she could help you manage things. According to the email service's read receipts, it was opened at 2:47 p.m. that same day. It was then immediately deleted and moved to trash, which was then emptied. I verified all of this through the email provider's activity log that you can access in account settings. The evidence was damning. I watched my mother's face as she processed this, saw the exact moment she understood what had happened. Chloe stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the hardwood floor. This is insane. You're making me into some kind of villain because you're jealous. You've always been jealous of me. Jealous? I let out a bitter laugh. Chloe, I'm not jealous of you. I'm heartbroken because my sister deliberately sabotaged my wedding. Do you have any idea what it was like? Standing there on what should have been the happiest day of my life, looking at empty seats where my parents should have been, where my sister should have been. We would have come if we'd known, my father said, but he was looking at Chloe now, not at me. I called you the week before, I said, my voice breaking slightly. I called you, Dad, and asked if you'd gotten your text yet. Do you remember? His face said he did. You told me you didn't know what I was talking about. You said you hadn't heard anything about a wedding. I told you the date, the time, the location. I asked you what happened to the invitation. And you told me. I had to stop, had to take a breath. You told me to stop playing games and that if I wanted to have a real conversation about my future, I should call back when I was being serious. I thought you were joking, he said weakly. Why would I joke about that? Silence. I called Mom next, I continued. Got her voicemail. Left a message explaining everything, begging you both to come. Chloe, you deleted that voicemail before Mom ever heard it, didn't you? Chloe's silence was confirmation enough. It wasn't just the invitations, I said, pulling out more papers. I sent a group text to the family chat in February with all the wedding details. That text thread was deleted by the chat admin. Chloe, you were the admin of that chat. I sent physical letters to your office, Dad. Chloe worked as your receptionist that month while Lisa was on maternity leave. Those letters never made it to your desk. I had documentation for everything. After the wedding, after I'd realized what had happened, I'd spent 2 months tracking down every piece of evidence I could find. I called the invitation company, the email service, my phone provider. I printed out chat logs before Chloe could delete them permanently. I'd requested call records showing my attempts to reach my parents. Everything was in this folder. She even, I said, my voice shaking with anger now, contacted the venue a week before the wedding, claiming to be me. She said there was a family emergency and asked about postponement options. The only reason they didn't act on it was because when the event coordinator called Daniel to confirm, he had no idea what she was talking about. They flagged the account for security after that. Chloe? Ethan was staring at his wife, confusion and horror mixing on his face. Chloe was sobbing now, mascara running down her cheeks. You don't understand. You don't understand what it's like being compared to you my whole life. Compared to me? I almost laughed. Are you kidding? You've been the favorite since birth. Everything has always been about you. That's not true. Chloe said desperately. You're the responsible one, the smart one, the one who never needed anything from anyone. I was just the pretty one, the one whose only value was in looks and charm. So, you destroyed my wedding? I didn't think it through, she whispered. Ethan had just told me he wasn't ready to get engaged yet. And then I saw your save the date in the mail, and I couldn't stand it. I couldn't stand that you were going to have this perfect wedding, and I was going to have to smile and be happy for you when I was dying inside. The table was silent, except for Chloe's crying and the ticking of that damn clock. So, you took that away from me, I said softly. You took away my parents walking me down the aisle. You took away my sister being my maid of honor, which is what I'd wanted since we were kids. You took away my family being there on the most important day of my life because you were having a temper tantrum. I'm sorry. Chloe sobbed. I'm so sorry. I tried to fix it after the wedding. After I saw the photos online, I tried to fix it, but it was too late. You tried to fix it? My voice was sharp. Is that what you call it? You told everyone I'd had a courthouse wedding. You told everyone I'd chosen not to invite family because Daniel and I wanted something small and intimate. You rewrote history to make it seem like my choice. My mother had started crying now, too. My father looked like he'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. And then, I continued, because I was going to say it all now, everything I'd held in for 7 months. You planned your wedding. Your massive, expensive, everyone must attend wedding. And you made sure everyone knew that your wedding was the real family wedding, the one that actually mattered. Sweetheart, my father said, reaching for my hand. I pulled away. I sat at home on your wedding day, Chloe, I told her. And I looked at the pictures you all posted online. I saw Mom crying happy tears when you walked down the aisle. I saw Dad's speech about his little princess. I saw all my aunts and uncles and cousins celebrating with you. And I wondered what I'd done to deserve being erased from this family. You're not erased, my mother said, tears streaming down her face. Sweetheart, we didn't know. We thought. You thought I didn't want you there, I finished, because that's what Chloe told you. She shaped the narrative so perfectly that none of you questioned it. None of you thought it was strange that I wouldn't invite my own parents to my wedding. None of you called to ask me about it directly. I did think it was strange, Aunt Sarah said quietly. All eyes turned to her. I called your mother about it, asked if you two had had a falling out. She said you'd become distant and were going through some kind of phase where you wanted to separate yourself from the family. I looked at my mother. You said that? She couldn't meet my eyes. Chloe told us that's what you'd said, my mother whispered. She said you told her you were tired of being in her shadow and wanted to do things on your own. We believed her because she's never lied to us before. That you know of, Daniel said quietly. It was the first time he'd spoken since dinner started. Chloe flinched. I have copies of everything, I said, placing the folder back on the table. Every receipt, every confirmation, every piece of evidence. I had to hire a private investigator to help me piece it all together because I thought I was losing my mind. I thought maybe I had forgotten to send the invitations. Maybe I dreamed the phone calls. But I didn't. Everything I said is documented in here. I looked around the table at my family, at the shocked faces and guilty expressions. I came here today because I wanted you all to know the truth. I wanted you to know that I didn't exclude you from my wedding. I didn't choose to cut you out of my life. That choice was made for me by someone who was supposed to love me. Emily, please, Chloe said, standing up and trying to come toward me. Please, I'm so sorry. I'll do anything to make this right. Anything. There's nothing you can do, I said simply. You can't give me back that day. You can't give me back the feeling of seeing my mom's face when I walked down the aisle, or having my dad give me away, or dancing with my sister at my reception. Those moments are gone forever. We could have a vow renewal, my mother said desperately. We could all be there and it would be beautiful and it wouldn't be the same, I interrupted. It would be a consolation prize. A make-up event for the wedding I should have had. Ethan had gone completely silent, staring at his wife like he'd never seen her before. Chloe was hunched over, arms wrapped around herself, shaking with sobs. How many other things have you lied about? He asked, his voice gaining an edge I'd never heard before. How many other times have you manipulated situations to get what you wanted? Ethan, please. Chloe gasped. Not here. Not now. But he stood up, pushing his chair back. I asked you point blank if you knew why Emily wasn't at our wedding. You told me she declined the invitation because she was having marital problems. You said she was embarrassed. My jaw dropped. You told him what? Chloe's face crumpled further. I had to explain why you weren't there. Everyone was asking. So you made up lies about my marriage? The anger I'd been holding back turned into something bigger, something I couldn't control. You told people Daniel and I were having problems? I panicked. Chloe whispered. The lies just kept getting bigger, and I couldn't stop them. Aunt Sarah spoke up again, her voice sharp. Is that why you told me Emily was thinking about divorce? Last summer at the pool party? I felt Daniel tense beside me. He hadn't known about that one either. Multiple people came up to me at your wedding, I said slowly, pieces falling into place, and told me they were glad Daniel and I had worked things out. I had no idea what they were talking about. I thought they confused me with someone else. Oh my God, Cousin Jessica breathed. She told everyone at the bridal shower. She said you and Daniel were in counseling. The table erupted again, more relatives chiming in with things Chloe had told them. My marriage was rocky, we were fighting constantly, I was jealous of Chloe's relationship, I'd gained weight and was depressed. The lies had spread like poison. Stop! I said, but my voice was too quiet under the chaos. Stop! Daniel shouted, standing up. The room went silent immediately. Do you all hear yourselves? You're confirming that you believed these lies. You believed Emily's marriage was falling apart, and none of you, not one of you, called her to check if she was okay. You didn't offer support or ask if she needed help. You just gossiped about it. The shame on their faces was palpable. Chloe created a narrative, Daniel continued, his voice hard, where Emily was the problem, the troubled sister, the one who was struggling. And you all accepted it without question because it was easier than confronting the golden child. My father opened his mouth to protest, but nothing came out. Daniel, sweetheart, that's not fair, my mother tried. Isn't it? Daniel challenged. Emily called you crying 2 weeks after the wedding. I was there. I heard her begging you to explain why you weren't there. What did you tell her, Linda? My mother flinched at the use of her first name. Daniel had always called her Mrs. Morrison before. I told her I didn't know what she was talking about, my mother admitted quietly. Chloe had shown me text messages that day from Emily saying she wanted space from the family. I thought Emily was having some kind of breakdown. I never sent those texts, I said. Did you check the number they came from? The look on my mother's face told me she hadn't. Chloe had a second phone, Ethan said suddenly, his voice hollow. A burner phone. She said it was for work, for keeping her personal and professional life separate. But she's a graphic designer. She works from home. There's no reason she'd need two phones. Chloe's head snapped up. Ethan, don't. How long? He demanded. How long have you been using that phone to pretend to be other people, to send fake messages? I want to go home. Chloe said, standing up abruptly. I can't do this anymore. I can't sit here and be attacked by everyone. Attacked? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You're the victim now? You humiliated me. Chloe shouted, her sadness transforming into rage. You came here with your folder and your evidence, and you destroyed me in front of everyone. On Thanksgiving. You couldn't have talked to me privately? You had to make a spectacle? I shot back. Like the spectacle you made of my life? You didn't just lie about the wedding, Chloe. You spent months destroying my reputation with our entire family. You made them think I was falling apart. That my marriage was a disaster. That I was too mentally unstable to be around. And for what? So they wouldn't question why I wasn't at your perfect wedding? You've always had it easier. Chloe hissed. Perfect Emily. Smart Emily. Emily who never needs anything from anyone. Do you know what it's like being your sister? Apparently easier than being yours. I snapped. Uncle Robert cleared his throat uncomfortably. Maybe we should all take a break. Calm down. No, I said firmly. Everyone's going to sit here and hear this because I've spent 8 months listening to all of you praise Chloe's wedding while mine was erased from existence. The weight of what I'd done was settling on me. I'd blown up Thanksgiving. Exposed Chloe in front of the entire family. There was no coming back from this. But I'd lived with this secret, this pain, for 7 months. I'd sat through Mother's Day brunch, listened to my mom gush about Chloe's wedding planning. I'd endured 4th of July barbecues where everyone passed around wedding photos. I'd smiled and nodded and pretended everything was fine while dying inside. I need you all to understand something, I said, looking around the table one last time. I didn't do this for revenge. I didn't do this to hurt Chloe, even though she hurt me. I did this because I couldn't sit here one more time and listen to everyone celebrate her wedding while pretending mine never happened. I did this because 86 people showed up to celebrate Daniel and me, and the 6 people who mattered most were missing because of lies. I picked up my purse. Daniel stood up beside me, his hand finding the small of my back. We're going to go now, I said. Thank you for dinner, Mom. The turkey was delicious as always. Emily, wait, my father said, standing up. Please don't leave like this. We need to talk about this as a family. We're not a family, I said quietly. A family shows up for each other. A family doesn't let 8 months go by without wondering why their daughter isn't speaking to them. A family asks questions. We did ask questions, my mother protested. Chloe said you were busy with work and needed space. She said she was staying in touch with you and that everything was fine. I looked at Chloe, who was still crying, her perfect makeup completely destroyed. Did you tell them I called you every week for 2 months after the wedding? I asked her. Did you tell them I sent emails asking why they weren't there? Did you tell them I showed up at your apartment in May and you wouldn't answer the door even though I could hear you inside? Chloe's silence was answer enough. I grieved you all, I said, my voice breaking on the words. I grieved my family like you died because, in a way, you had. The family I thought I had, the people I thought would never let me down, they were gone, and I had to accept that and move on. We're right here, my father said, his own voice cracking. We're right here and we're so sorry. If we'd known. But you didn't know, I said. And maybe that's partly Chloe's fault for lying, but it's also partly your fault for not trying harder to find out the truth. I'm your daughter, too. I shouldn't have had to prove that I wanted you at my wedding. The folder sat on the table between us like a bomb. Inside it was everything. The truth, the evidence, the proof that I wasn't crazy or cruel or selfish. But it was also the end of something. You can't come back from this kind of revelation. Some betrayals are too big to forgive. I hope you can all enjoy the rest of your Thanksgiving, I said, taking Daniel's hand. We're going to go home and have the quiet dinner we should have had from the start. We walked toward the door, my heels clicking on the hardwood floor. Behind us, chaos erupted. My mother was demanding answers from Chloe. My father was trying to call me back. Cousins and aunts and uncles were all talking at once. Daniel opened the door for me, and I stepped out into the cold November air. It felt like I could breathe for the first time in months. You okay? He asked softly, wrapping his arm around me. I leaned into him, feeling tears finally start to fall. No, I said honestly. But I will be. Daniel drove us home in silence, his hand holding mine across the center console. Our little apartment was dark when we arrived, but it felt warm, safe. This was my real family now, Daniel and the life we were building together. My phone started buzzing almost immediately. Texts from my mother, my father, Aunt Sarah, cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. I turned it off and placed it face down on the kitchen counter. We still have that frozen pizza, Daniel said, trying to smile. And I think there's ice cream. Perfect, I said. We heated up the pizza and ate it on the couch, watching some mindless TV show neither of us paid attention to. Daniel held me while I cried, then laughed, then cried again. The emotional whiplash was exhausting. Do you regret it? He asked after a while. I thought about it. Really thought about it. Did I regret exposing Chloe? Hurting my parents? Blowing up Thanksgiving? No, I said, finally. I regret that it had to happen. I regret that Chloe made choices that led to this moment. But I don't regret telling the truth. He kissed the top of my head. Good, because that was the bravest thing I've ever seen you do. The next morning, I turned my phone back on. 73 messages, 15 voicemails, 3 emails. I read through them all, one by one. My mother apologizing, begging me to come back so we could talk. My father saying he was disappointed in Chloe, but also asking me to forgive her. Chloe herself had sent a long, rambling text about her therapy and her issues with jealousy, how she'd been working on herself. But the message that made me pause was from Ethan. It was short. Thank you for telling the truth. I'm so sorry for what you went through. Chloe and I are going to be taking some time apart. I felt a pang of guilt at that. I hadn't wanted to destroy Chloe's marriage, but then again, I hadn't destroyed anything. Chloe's lies had caught up to her. That wasn't my fault. Over the next few weeks, my family tried everything to get me to come back. My mother wanted to plan a proper celebration of my marriage. My father offered to pay for a vow renewal ceremony. Chloe wrote me a long letter detailing every instance of her jealousy and insecurity, explaining but not excusing her behavior. I read it all, but I didn't respond. I needed time. Time to process, time to heal, time to figure out if these relationships were even worth salvaging. Daniel and I spent Christmas alone in our apartment, cooking a small ham. And watching Christmas movies. It was quiet, simple, and exactly what I needed. My mother called 17 times that day. I let every call go to voicemail. It was New Year's Eve when I finally responded to my parents. I sent them a short email. I appreciate your apologies. I need more time. Please respect that. My mother called immediately. I didn't answer. Chloe and Ethan separated in January. According to Aunt Sarah, who had somehow gotten my work email address, the wedding revelation had made Ethan question everything about their relationship. He'd found other lies, other manipulations, other times Chloe had shaped reality to suit her needs. By March, they'd filed for divorce. I felt terrible about that. But I also remembered sitting in my wedding dress, looking at empty seats, feeling abandoned by everyone I loved. Chloe had made her choices. Everyone had to live with the consequences. It's been almost 2 years since that Thanksgiving. I still don't talk to Chloe. She sends cards on my birthday and Christmas, always with long notes about her therapy and personal growth. I read them, acknowledge the work she's doing, but I'm not ready to let her back into my life. Maybe I never will be. My relationship with my parents is complicated. We have lunch once a month at a neutral location. We talk about surface-level things, work, weather, Daniel's business. We don't talk about Chloe. We don't talk about the wedding. We're trying, in our own way, to build something new from the ruins of what we had. Sometimes I wonder if I should have just kept quiet. Let them believe Chloe's lies. Let everyone think I had a courthouse wedding. Avoided the confrontation entirely. It would have been easier. But I look at my wedding photos now, displayed proudly in our home, and I remember that day. I remember the joy, the love, the commitment Daniel and I made. That day happened. It was real. It mattered. And I refused to let it be erased. It makes me wonder, what would you have done if your own sister had tried to erase the most important day of your life?